So we had discussed Stefan Boltzmann law, and so just recapitulating. So just a second. So this was our plan for this particular chapter. We had done up to Stefan Boltzmann law. So we will do the last four things, okay? Wien's displacement law, Wien's distribution law, Rayleigh-Jeans law, and ultraviolet chemistry. So these four things we'll do today and end the first part, that is classical theory of thermal radiation. And in next class we'll go over to the quantum development, where Planck introduced the quantum analysis of thermal radiation. So we'll discuss we had discussed up to Stefan's law, which is a proven law and followed by most of the black bodies, perfect and imperfect. So we said that Stefan's law alone said only about the emission of radiation. It did not say anything about the exchange of radiation between the object and the environment. This is Stefan's law. Okay, and then came Stefan Boltzmann law. So in 1879, Stefan gave his law, and in 1884, Boltzmann added to it using Prevost's theory of heat exchanges, and we got Stefan Boltzmann law. So it takes into account exchange of heat with the surroundings, and it says E equal to sigma T to the power 4 minus T0 to the power 4, where T0 is the temperature of the surrounding black body, that is also considered to be a black body. And if these are not perfect black bodies, then we add a multiplicative constant E, which is the emissivity and which has value from 0 to 1. So for a perfect black body, the value of E is 1, and otherwise its value is less than 1. Okay, so we went about to prove Stefan's law using thermodynamical consideration, utilizing the fact that we can treat thermal radiation like a gas, because we saw earlier that it exerts pressure, and for diffused radiation enclosed within a chamber, the radiation pressure on walls is just 1/3 of U, the energy density that we saw in our last class. Okay, so it's almost like gas particles enclosed in a chamber where the average pressure on the walls is 1/3 the density. Okay, 1/3 rho, if you remember. So we had used thermodynamical relation, and considering a cavity or a chamber which has radiation maintained at a temperature T, pressure P, and volume V, we used the first law and the second thermodynamical relation. And in the second thermodynamical relation, we used the expression of dq as du plus pdv using the first law. And then so these were the steps which I had explained. So using these steps and the fact that P is equal to U by 3, we had seen by integrating that U is equal to Ct to the power 4, which you are all familiar with because you have all used your laboratory kits to prove Stefan's law by plotting, remember, log P against log P, and you had seen that it comes out to be a straight line with slope close to 4. It comes to about 3.7, 3.6, and when we get that straight line, we say Stefan's law is proved. So this is how that comes. Okay, so this is the total rate of emission per unit area of the black body. Now, so this was theoretically designed, these things were theoretically proven, and then experimentally Stefan's law was proven using thermodynamical relation, and then this relation can also be proven in the laboratory, which you yourself have done. And then more and more experiments were done to analyze black body radiation. Okay. So the next thing that was studied was the distribution of energy in black body radiation. Now, by distribution of energy, I very much mean the normal distribution functions that you are familiar with. Okay, you have come across distribution functions like Maxwell's velocity distribution function, right? You've seen how there is a bell curve, a Boltzmann distribution. So whenever we talk about distribution, it is a statistical function, meaning that we want to see what is the average value for a certain range of the parameter on which it depends. For example, if we are studying black body radiation, then energy distribution means we will see how the energy changes with wavelength or frequency, and then we'll draw the distribution curve which will show us that for a given wavelength what is the average value of energy. Okay, so then the average value of energy plotted against wavelength or frequency will give us the distribution curve and show us its dependence on wavelength or frequency. Okay, so this was exactly what was done. This is the experimental setup by Lummer and Pringsheim. Okay, this was closely after Stefan Boltzmann law was prescribed. So see, if you see the setup, I've forgotten to give in the arrow. So this is our starting point. Okay, radiation from electrically heated carbon tube. Now remember, these rays here, they represent not visible light. These rays are not visible, but the setup is very much like a setup we typically use in our optics lab. Okay, precisely keeping in mind the fact that these radiations are nothing but electromagnetic waves. Okay, so heat or thermal radiation comes out from an electrically heated carbon tube which is kept on the other side of a slit so that only a narrow part of the radiation comes out, and then it is made to impinge on a concave mirror. Okay, so this is the direction. I've forgotten to give the arrows. So this is the starting point and this is the ending point. Okay, so gets reflected by the concave mirror here and goes and falls on a fluorospar prism. Okay, so this is a prism which is being used not to see visible spectrum but to collimate the rays coming from a electrically heated carbon tube. All right, so since this is a prism, there will be some deviation in the different wavelengths, and then there is another concave mirror here from which the rays are again converged. A concave mirror will converge the rays. They are converged and made to pass through a slit and go to a measuring device called a bolometer. Okay, so a bolometer is a measuring device. It's an apparatus which is capable of registering thermal radiation. It is capable of registering the intensity of thermal radiation. Okay, so okay, so this the bolometer actually. So basically, what is happening here is the prism. Of course, it is kept on a turntable like our normal. All of you have used the spectrometer, thankfully. So just imagine when I am speaking to first year students, like second sem students, everything for them is fictitious. They have not seen a physics laboratory till now, and I don't know when they will see. At least you all have seen things with your eyes and handled things with your hands, so that I can make reference. So basically this prism is on a turntable, exactly similar to how you have used your spectrometer, and this turntable is rotated so that the different parts of the radiation spectrum that is produced by the prism will successively fall on the bolometer, okay, and the corresponding deflection is seen in the galvanometer. A galvanometer is connected to the bolometer circuit. So the galvanometer will basically show the deflection because of the radiation coming from a particular part of the radiation spectrum that has come out from the prism. And the intensity of each line then is actually proportional to the deflection of the galvanometer. Okay, so by reading the galvanometer deflection, the intensity is noted. So that is the intensity corresponding to a particular wavelength or frequency, and that is how the curve is drawn. Okay, so the curves at different temperatures. So basically this carbon tube, which is here acting as the black body, is heated to different temperatures, and for a given temperature, so suppose you heat it to a particular temperature T, say 1500 K, okay, 1500 Kelvin, and then you let it emit the radiation. So the radiation will come and will fall on the prism. Now the prism will then produce the spectrum, radiation spectrum, and as you turn the prism table, different parts of the prism of that radiation spectrum will be reflected and registered by the bolometer. Okay, so by that method, for a given temperature, you can draw the intensity curve for different wavelengths. Plot the intensity basically against wavelength. Then you raise the temperature to a different value, and then again perform the same process, and again you get another intensity distribution curve for the different wavelengths at that particular temperature. So the curves obtained look like this. Okay, so this is a picture taken from the internet. If you go and Google these names, you know, black body radiation, Lamer and French experiment, Wien's distribution, you will get a plethora of images and laws and write-ups and PDFs. But just as I keep telling you that it's always all right to go through them, but there are always, you know, impurities in everything. So you must know how to scan for impurities. So you must keep your books with you so that you know what is right and what is wrong before you read something. And you will see also different books and on the material available in the web that this y-axis, sometimes they plot energy density, sometimes they plot radiation, it is written as radiation emittance, sometimes it is written power. So for example, here it is written power radiated. Now all these are quantities that are related to the intensity. Just remember that no matter what is plotted along the y-axis, it is always related to the intensity of the radiation at that wavelength. Okay, so what do we see? That if you plot it against wavelength, so here we have a set of curves at temperatures 1250 K, 1500 K, 1750 K and 2000 K. Okay, so you can see there are several things that can be observed. Okay, and we'll jot them down one by one. What are the different things that can be observed from this? But this is the general curve that is followed by all black bodies. Whatever material of black body you take, if you analyze the distribution of energy against wavelength or in frequency, the nature of the curve is the same. And we can see clearly that with wavelength, with increasing wavelength, the power or the energy density, it initially increases, reaches a maximum and then decreases, right? And this maximum value is reached at a particular value of the wavelength, and that wavelength is called lambda m. What is lambda m? the value of wavelength at which maximum intensity is obtained. And you can see that the value of lambda m at which this maximum intensity is obtained gradually shifts to lower wavelengths as temperature increases. You can see that the value of lambda m, that is the wavelength at which maximum intensity is obtained, gradually shifts to lower wavelengths as temperature is increased. Okay. So this is what is obtained. This is the experimental graph. Now let us see what the observations are. Let us just jot down the observations. First of all, at a given temperature, the energy is not uniformly distributed in the radiation spectrum. You can see that there is non-uniform distribution of energy. At a given temperature, the intensity increases with increasing wavelength, becomes a maximum at a particular wavelength lambda m, beyond which it decreases again. Okay. With increasing temperature, the value of lambda m decreases. You can see that also, that the value of lambda m decreases with increasing temperature, clearly seen from the graphs. The energy emission increases with increasing temperature for all wavelengths. Whatever be the wavelength, the value of the maximum emitted energy increases with increasing temperature. Okay. Overall, it increases and then decreases, but the maximum value that it reaches at lambda m is at a higher point for increasing temperature. That is also visible. Okay. And finally, the area under the curve gives the total energy emitted by the body at that temperature for the range of wavelengths under consideration. Okay. The area under each curve gives the total energy emitted by the body at that temperature for the range of wavelengths under consideration. Okay. So it is seen that this area varies as fourth power of the temperature. So if you integrate and find out the area under a particular curve, you will see that this area varies as fourth power of the temperature, which is nothing but Stefan-Boltzmann law. So this experimental curve also is a proof of the Stefan-Boltzmann law that is followed by blackbody radiation. All right. Now this lambda mt equal to constant, we will now take a close look at this relation. So that is what is actually known as Wien's displacement law. It was given in 1893 from the observation of the spectrum of blackbody radiation. Plain and simple, lambda m t equal to constant. This is the statement of Wien's displacement law. Okay. The value of this constant is evaluated as 0.2892 centimeter Kelvin. Okay. So we see that as temperature is increased, the emitted radiation contains an increased number of shorter wavelengths. As the temperature is raised, the maximum intensity of radiation is shifted or displaced towards shorter wavelengths. Okay. Now it was all, this is displacement law. This is what is known as the displacement law. Now it was also shown by Wien that Em, the maximum energy, is proportional to T to the power 5. We saw that Em increases with temperature. Now Wien showed that this maximum energy is proportional to T to the power 5. So Em equal to constant into T to the power 5 or Em T to the power minus 5 equal to constant. Now Wien said that this is the kind of relation that exists. He said that the relation of the energy density or the radiation emitted, the emissive power, whatever you call it, at a particular wavelength follows this relation. c lambda to the power minus 5 and multiplied by a function of lambda t. Okay. So this is the emissive power of the black body, which has the maximum value at the temperature T. And Wien took an abrupt but plausible assumption that this function f of lambda t is equal to a e to the power minus a by lambda t. Okay. This was an abrupt assumption made by Wien, but this was a plausible assumption taking into consideration the circumstances under which he took this assumption, made this assumption. So what do we get? E lambda equal to c lambda to the power minus 5 a e to the power minus small a by lambda t. This is the expression. Okay. So we can write E lambda equal to k lambda to the power minus 5 e to the power minus a by lambda t, where k is equal to c into a. Okay, the product of these two constants. It was found that the value of k is 4.94 into 10 to the power 15 CJS units, and the value of this constant a found in the exponential term is 1.43 centimeter cube. Okay. So we can write E lambda d lambda equal to this k lambda to the power minus 5 e to the power minus a by lambda t d lambda. Now this amount E lambda d lambda is called dE, which is the amount of energy in the spectral region lying within wavelengths lambda and lambda plus d lambda at the temperature T. Okay. So if you measure the energy in the spectral region which lies within an infinitesimally close value of the close interval of the wavelength, that is between lambda and lambda plus d lambda, then that is given by E lambda d lambda. Okay. So we find from here that d equal to k e to the power minus k lambda to the power minus 5 e to the power minus a by lambda t d lambda. This relation is called Wien's law of energy distribution. So basically we have two laws related to Wien. One is the Wien's displacement law, which is universally followed by black body radiation, and the second is Wien's law of energy distribution. Now we will see later that the energy distribution law matches experimental curve only at shorter wavelengths. When you go to higher wavelengths, the distribution law is not following the experimental curve any longer. We will see that there is a deviation of this distribution law, which is theoretical, from the experimental curve. Now next come Rayleigh-Jean's law. Again, these are things that you have already done in your quantum theory classes, but we will see that we are looking at these from a different point of view. We are looking at these now from a thermodynamic and statistical point of view. Now Rayleigh-Jean's law was again a theoretical attempt to fit the experimental curve obtained by Larmor and Pynchon. Wien's displacement law was something that was obtained following the experimental curve of Larmor and Pynchon. But Wien's distribution law was a theoretical attempt at establishing Larmor and Pynchon's experimental curve theoretically. When it failed at higher wavelengths, the next attempt was made by Rayleigh and Jeans. Again a theoretical attempt to fit the experimental curve as obtained by Larmor and Pynchon by a theoretical law. What was assumed? Remember, these are all analysis based on classical physics. Okay. So what was assumed for this proof or this establishment? Rayleigh and Jeans assumed that for electromagnetic radiation spectrum emitted by a black body, there is continuous variation with wavelength from 0 to infinity. That is, energy or radiation spectrum varies continuously from 0 to infinity. So there is no abrupt change anywhere. Radiation in nature will have continuous variation with wavelength and therefore with frequency too. The law, energy distribution E lambda d lambda, or d if you want to write it like that, is 8 pi kT divided by lambda to the power 4 d lambda. Okay, so the energy obtained in a radiation which lies within the wavelength interval lambda and lambda plus d lambda is equal to 8 pi kT by lambda to the power 4 d lambda. K is Boltzmann constant. Now how do we derive this? I will one by one write down the steps that will be followed to derive Rayleigh-Jean's law totally from classical basics. Okay, so there is no role that quantum mechanics plays here. Totally from classical basics, we will try to prove, try to derive Rayleigh-Jean's law, and then we'll compare it with the experimentally obtained curve. So what do? We consider the black body to be a cubical cavity of side A, whose metallic walls are uniformly heated to a temperature T, and then they emit electromagnetic radiation in the thermal range of frequencies. Okay, clear? First assumption is that the black body is a cubical cavity of type K. Okay, just a second. The law. So the first assumption is a cubical cavity of side A, which the walls of which will emit electromagnetic radiation in the thermal range of frequencies. Now, since they are using classical electromagnetic theory, so you have to consider the situation. So electromagnetic radiation is emitted by the walls of the container, and so the waves which the electromagnetic radiation emitted from a wall means basically it is a simple harmonic wave. Now since it is emitted, it will go to the opposite wall, and from the opposite wall it will get reflected back. Okay, so clearly standing waves are formed within the cavity, and since standing waves are formed within the cavity, and we have imagined the walls to lie at say x equal to 0 and x equal to a in the x direction, so you can understand, I hope, that there will be two nodes at least for this standing wave at the two walls. So considering all the 6 walls, all the 3 directions, the walls will definitely have the nodes of the standing wave. And depending on the different modes of vibration, there will be other nodes in between. I hope all of you can distinguish between the terms nodes, N-O-D-E-S, and modes, M-O-D-E-S. Clear? Because I have a bit of cold, which is why my voice is a bit nasal. So if you cannot understand, then please unmute and tell me. Node or mode? সবাই ভাইব্রেশনস পড়েছো, তারপরে কোয়ান্টাম মেকানিক্সেও আমরা যখন পার্টিকেল কনফাইন্ড উইদিন বক্স পড়েছি তখন আমরা ডিফারেন্ট মোডস অফ ভাইব্রেশন, আর ফর ইচ মোড অফ ভাইব্রেশন কতগুলো করে নোড হবে এই জিনিসটা পড়েছি। তাহলে I hope that you have an idea of the difference between nodes and modes. Okay, so here we have stationary waves where definitely the nodes will be there existing at the walls. Now since it's a cubical cavity, so each direction will have mutually independent components. So we Consider the x component, which is a standing wave having nodes at x equal to 0 and a, y component having nodes at y equal to 0 and a, and z component having nodes at z equal to 0. So these conditions will restrict the possible wavelengths and frequencies inside the cavity. Since the number of nodes and their positions are fixed, so that restriction will impose a limit to the frequency and wavelength that can be there existing within the cavity. So our next task is to count the number of standing waves with nodes on the walls having wavelengths lying in the interval lambda and lambda plus d lambda corresponding to the frequency range nu to nu plus d nu. Okay? দুটো দেওয়ালে নোড আছে, এছাড়া আর কটা নোড কি কি মোড অফ ভাইব্রেশন আছে এবং সেগুলো কনসিডার করে হাউ মেনি number of standing waves can exist if you take a particular interval of wavelength between lambda and lambda plus d lambda. That is what we need to find out. So just recall the mathematical form of one-dimensional electromagnetic standing wave. We take the electric part, electric field part, not the magnetic field part, and this is the expression. Okay, if you don't remember, then go back to your stationary waves chapter and you will quickly remember. We just need to keep in mind that the space variation, the amplitude variation is also sinusoidal. So no matter what time variation you have, the amplitude variation along that time is sinusoidally varying. So we can see that the amplitude will be 0 for all positions satisfying sine 2 pi x by lambda equal to 0 or sine 2x by lambda equal to 0. If it is 0, then amplitude comes out to be 0, which means it's a node. If it is 1, then again amplitude comes out to be sine of pi, which again is 0, which is a node. If it is 2, it will be sine 2 pi, which again corresponds to 0, so again a node, and so on so forth. So if 2x by lambda is equal to 0 or any positive integer, then the amplitude becomes 0, indicating the position of a node, that is indicating a position either on the wall or some intermediate node. Okay? So considering the x direction alone now, so simplifying our problem to be confined only to one dimension. So considering the x dimension alone, we have two fixed positions of nodes. One is at x equal to 0 and the other at x equal to a. So we must take 2x by lambda equal to n at x equal to a, so that n equal to 1, 2, 3. Clear? এইখানে যদি দেখো 2x by lambda equal to n at n equal to 1, 2, 3. Okay? So this is the condition for the amplitude to become 0 at a given nth position of a node. So this gives a set of allowed values for lambda and also the different modes of vibration. So the allowed frequencies are given by c equal to nu equal to c by lambda, where lambda equal to 2a by n. From this expression here, 2x by n equal to n, where x equal to a. So if you put a instead of x here, we have 2a by lambda equal to a. So lambda equal to 2a by n. Alright? Now let us denote n mu d mu to be the number of allowed values in the range nu and nu plus d. Let n mu d mu be the number of modes of vibration or number of modes of standing waves that are allowed within this range. So obviously from unitary method you can now write that if the total number of allowed frequency is 2a by n, then the number of allowed frequency within a given interval n nu d nu is 2a by n d nu. However, this is one point that we tend to forget, but we must remember. এই একটা পয়েন্ট ভোলার জন্য কিন্তু আনসারটা সবসময় ভুল হয়ে যায়। সেটা হচ্ছে যে we have an electromagnetic wave, so at any point it has two independent modes of polarization. Okay, so that is why for each given wave we have to multiply it by 2. Alright, so we have two states of polarization of electromagnetic waves. So basically the number of standing waves falling between frequency mu and nu plus d nu is 2a by c d nu, but since this number is not fixed and since each wave has two independent polarization conditions, two states of polarization, so each of this must again be multiplied by 2. So finally n nu d nu comes out to be 4a by c d. Okay? So this is the number of allowed standing waves for a one-dimensional cavity. Keep in mind that this is only for one-dimensional cavity. Now obtaining this expression for a, so now that we have the expression for a one-dimensional cavity, we just have to extend our discussion to 3 dimensions. So for that, instead of just a single n integer, we have to think of an array of integers nx, ny, nz. So the number of points lying between the shells of radii corresponding to the frequency mu and nu plus d nu. If you have two shells, if you consider two spherical shells, one of radius mu and the other of radius nu plus d nu, then the number of points lying between these shells will be given by the array this nx, ny, nz, and it can be shown that n nu d nu equal to 8 pi a cube by c cube nu square d. Okay, this is very simple geometrical consideration. If you are interested, then this derivation of how n nu d nu comes out to be 8 pi a cube by c cube mu square d nu, where a cube is the volume of the cube, is given in detail in Iceberg's book, Iceberg-Resnick's book. Okay, if you have the book, then go through it. If you don't have the book, then please do inform me in our group. I'll send you a PDF of the scanned PDF of the 2 pages of solution. It's a long solution, not very difficult to understand, pretty easy and straightforward, but it is not directly required in your syllabus, which is why I have not given the elaborate solution. I have just given you the steps of how to count the number. What is the, what are the steps that Rayleigh and Jeans followed to count the number of standing waves within a given wavelength of frequency interval. So these are the steps that they follow classically. So to evaluate the average energy of these standing waves, now this is the number of standing waves. Now how will you evaluate? We want the value of energy. We want the energy distribution, right? So what do we do? Rayleigh and Jeans use the law of equipartition of energy. Remember, for gas particles confined within a chamber, we use the law of equipartition of energy. Energy divided amongst the degrees of freedom, and the average energy that is there for each degree of freedom is kT by 2. Okay. For sinusoidal standing waves, this value comes out to be kT, where k is Boltzmann constant. Okay, we do not have the half factor because for sinusoidal wave the degree of freedom is 1. When the degree of freedom is 2, we have half plus minus half kT. When the degree of freedom is 1, it's just kT. You don't need to divide by 2. Okay, and the other assumption is that the average total energy has the same value for all standing waves within the cavity, irrespective of their frequencies. Okay, corrections because otherwise so now we come at the main point that will be followed in order to find out the value of n nu d nu. So energy per unit volume in the frequency interval nu and nu plus d nu from a cavity at temperature T is just the average energy multiplied by the number of standing waves. Okay. Of course, since we are getting energy density per unit volume, we have to divide by the volume of the cavity. So E nu d nu comes out to be 8 pi a cube by c cube mu square d nu was there. So you have to multiply by kt and divide by volume. So we are left with 8 pi kt by c cube mu square d nu. So clearly it is proportional to nu square and d nu, the frequency interval. So this is the formula for Rayleigh jeans given by Rayleigh jeans for black body radiation in terms of frequency. Using the relation C equal to nu lambda, you can easily change this relation in terms of wavelength. So Rayleigh jeans has given this expression in terms of frequency as well as wavelength. Okay, this is the Rayleigh jeans formula. Again, we'll see that this formula matches experimental curve only at longer wavelengths, not shorter wavelengths. It fails at shorter wavelengths. Okay. This is our final slide for today, a comparative discussion on the experimental and theoretical plots of black body radiation. I have used both the distributions. One is the radiance versus frequency and the other is with respect to wavelength. Okay, this we already saw in our previous slide. So this is the energy density versus frequency, and as you can see that it goes, the maximum value goes to larger frequencies because frequency and wavelength are inversely related for a given velocity. So here the value goes to larger frequencies, here the value comes to smaller wavelengths. Okay. So this line here is basically the line of Wien displacement law, that is lambda m t equal to constant. Now we saw that Wien's distribution law gives this variation and Rayleigh jeans law, this is nothing but E lambda d lambda. Rayleigh jeans law gives us this distribution. Wien's distribution fails at large wavelengths. Rayleigh jeans distribution fails at short wavelengths. So this is what happens. See, this is the experimental curve. This is Rayleigh jeans law, which is following the curve at large wavelengths, but as wavelengths decrease, it goes to infinity. And the experimental curve is this. The dashed line is called the Rayleigh jeans line. Sorry. This is Rayleigh jeans line. The dashed line inside is called the Wien's distribution law. So again we can see Wien's law follows the experimental curve at low wavelengths but does not follow the experimental curve at high wavelengths. Rayleigh jeans law somewhat follows the curve at high wavelengths but fails to follow them as wavelength decreases. So now comes the failure of classical theory to explain black body radiation. This is Rayleigh jeans law in terms of frequency. As I told you, from the Rayleigh jeans law in terms of wavelength, you can quickly convert it into terms of frequency by placing U equal to C lambda. So we see that the energy density is continuously increasing with increasing frequency, which means that as nu tends to infinity, E will also go to infinity. There is no stopping there is no restriction on energy values. Whatever be the value of energy, it will keep increasing with increasing frequency. Again, if you calculate the total energy of radiation at a given temperature, that is T constant, you have to integrate this thing, and integrating this, everything is constant, so we are left with 0 to infinity nu square d nu, which again will go to infinity. So this is the what is happening when you plot Rayleigh-Jean's law, experimental law, and Wien's distribution law with respect to frequency. And this is what happens when you plot the three laws in terms of wavelength. Okay? So these show the discrepancies between the theoretical laws and the experimental curve. The blue one is the experimental curve. Theoretically, we saw that it was following the experimental curve at shorter wavelengths but failed to do so at larger wavelengths. So in terms of frequency, it will follow the experimental curve at larger wavelengths and fail to do so at shorter wavelengths. And for the dependence on wavelength, it is just the opposite. Now the fact that this, this absurd result that Rayleigh-Jean's classical theory gives, which is this, that energy increases, can increase to infinite values if nu is changed to infinite values. Similarly, from the curves, it is seen that the area under the curve also goes to infinity, which is not true because we know that the area under the curve is proportional to t to the power 4, which is Stefan's law. This absurd result is known as ultraviolet catastrophe. Okay, the name itself shows you that this happens in the ultraviolet region. And when in the exam, if you are asked to draw a curve showing the ultraviolet catastrophe, then please very carefully choose the x-axis. If you are plotting such that the x-axis is frequency, then Rayleigh-Jean's law will fall on the left hand side, lower frequency. It matches the experimental curve at lower frequency but blows up, goes to infinite values as frequency is increased. On the other hand, it matches the experimental curve at higher wavelengths but goes up to infinite values, shoots up to infinite values at lower wavelengths. So these are the two curves showing the discrepancy between Rayleigh-Jean's law and the experimental curve and Wien's distribution law for different temperatures. Okay, and this absurd result is often known as ultraviolet catastrophe. So you have to understand that there are two reasons for this ultraviolet catastrophe. First of all, that radiation was treated as according to classical theory, which consequently led to the second fact is that there was continuous variation of energy that was considered, continuous variation with frequency or wavelength. Okay, as frequency increases, the energy density also increases. It is decreased, it also decreases. So that is the main reason that the theoretical analysis failed to actually give us the characteristic of ultraviolet catastrophe, or rather we should say radiation, electromagnetic radiation coming from a thermally activated body. This was done away by Planck when he switched from pure classical electromagnetic theory to what should I say? I shouldn't straight away say quantum theory because that was coined later on, to a theory which slightly deviates from this continuous model and uses a discrete model of the incident waves. Okay, So he said that the waves that are incident do not vary continuously in energy, but they are formed of distinct packets, each of value h. Okay, so that is what we will be discussing in our next class. So from Planck's constant onwards, we will. So basically, classical theory and classical analysis of thermal radiation is done. Ultraviolet catastrophe is the logical ending, because beyond that you cannot do anything. Once you have reached a catastrophe, then you have to think of designing other ways of analyzing the situation. So that is exactly what was done by Max Planck, and we will discuss Planck's quantum treatment from our next class onwards. Clear? Any questions till here? কোয়েশ্চেন আছে কারোর কোনো?